Okay, guys, well, today you're going to be learning about Cinco de Mayo. Okay, so a little bit of background information. The wars in Mexico before Cinco de Mayo happened had left the Mexican treasury bankrupt. Some of these wars were the wars against liberal and conservatives in Mexico, and also the war against the United States before that. And President Benito Juarez, who was in that time the president, he decided to suspend all the foreign debt payments for 2 years because there was no money. Now, England, France, and Spain did not like this, and they sent some naval forces to Veracruz, which is a coastal state in the Gulf of Mexico, and they demanded payment from the Mexican government. Now, the Mexican government was able to negotiate payment with both England and Spain, and they left Mexico. But France decided not to leave, and they decided that they would take this opportunity to establish a second Mexican empire. Okay, so what happened after this is in 1861, the French fleet stormed into Veracruz, and President Juarez and his government had to retreat because it was such a big attack. And the French started moving towards Mexico City. But in their way to Mexico City, they encounter a resistance close to the city of Puebla. Now, the French army was about 8,000 soldiers, and they attacked the very small army, the Mexican army, which was about 4,000 soldiers, and most of it was militia, so it wasn't very strong or very organized. Now, in May 5th, 1862, the Mexican army crushed the French army, which was considered the premier army in the world. And this is a map kind of like showing this situation. It started right here in Veracruz. This is where they arrived. And then they started slowly moving to Puebla. And Mexico City is a little bit to the side right here from Puebla. And that's where they met the Mexican army and where they were defeated. Now, this battle was not like a major strategic win in the war, but this win that was led by General Ignacio Zaragoza actually served to boost the morale of the Mexican people and to strengthen the resistance. That's what it did. And this is a picture depicting like reenactment of this battle. Now, after the battle, what happened? Well, a year later, after Cinco de Mayo, the French were actually able to capture Mexico City, and they installed Emperor Maximilian I as ruler of Mexico. And his government lasted only 3 years. And during that time, there was a lot of civil war movements, or like the resistance was attacking to be able to take away this French government. And this is a picture of the Emperor Maximilian I, who was appointed over Mexico. Now let's talk about what happened in the end with the war. In 1865, and after the American Civil War, the United States started to send help to the Mexican resistance. The United States, previously to this time, had decided to maintain itself neutral and not interfere with the war. Now, in 1866, the French were actually facing a persistent Mexican guerrilla. So the resistance was actually like continuously fighting. And also in France, they were facing the threat of going into war with Prussia. So all these factors made the French retreat from Mexico. And on June 5th, 1867, President Benito Juarez finally entered Mexico City, and he installed a legitimate government, and he reorganized his whole administration. And this is a picture of President Benito Juarez, and he is a key figure in Mexican history, and actually in Latin American history, he is also very well known. So let's talk about the impact that this battle, this moment, had on the United States. Now, when the French made that decision to invade Mexico, the reason why they do it is because they Napoleon III decided that this was going to be beneficial to the French. At that time, the U.S. was involved in the Civil War, and they could not take over another war against the French. So for the French, what they decided to do was they were going to set an empire in Mexico, and this was going to serve as a future strategy, and they were going to support the Confederates against the Union. Now, had the Mexican army not defeated the French army in Puebla on May 5th, well, perhaps the history of the United States would be a very different situation, because then the morale would have been so low that it's probable that the guerrilla in Mexico would have just completely dissipated, and the French would have completely taken over Mexico, and this would have eventually affected the United States, because the French would have supported the Confederates, and perhaps the Union would have lost, and that would have written the entire American history. Okay, now let's talk about the present day celebration. We're going to talk about Mexico and then the United States. In Mexico, there is no real commemoration of this day. I mean, schools are closed on that day, and there's a few parades, but there's no real party or celebration or anything. But in the United States, well, this celebration actually started in parts of California in 1863. And this happened when the Mexican miners heard about the news of the Battle of Puebla, and they started celebrating it. And then ever since, they were celebrating it in different parts of California. Now, in the 1940s, the Chicano movement gave Cinco de Mayo like a major boost in all of California. It started being really celebrated and commemorated as an important thing for the Mexican American population. And then in 1980, of course, different commercial companies started to promote Cinco de Mayo, and it became a popular celebration across the United States. Now, in the United States, there's more than 120 official U.S. celebrations of Cinco de Mayo. There's really none in Mexico, but there's a lot in the United States. And even the government encourages this celebration as a show of Mexican pride and the importance of Mexican culture in the United States. But the idea behind it is very different if we look at the history of it. So this is what Cinco de Mayo is. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed it.